we come to the end of session 3 and all set. A big round of applause for our moderator for the last session that is based on inclusive broadband connectivity. Can I request you, sir, to please take it on further to invite the panelists onto the dais.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to COI for having me as the moderator for this session. A very important session, no doubt. And before I say a few words about it, let me invite the panelists on dais. The first panelist we have is Shri Neeraj Kumar, DDG National Broadband Mission. So please join us. Our second panelist is Mr. Dharmender, Khajuria, who's heading the network partner business at Airtel. Mr. Akshat, Mohindra, account leader for government and PSU business Ciena. And Mr. Dinesh, Shiv, who is the head of India Telecom Compliance and Regulatory Zoom Communication. So we see that the panel is quite diverse and we look forward to some interesting inputs from them. So as we come to the final session of the day, we're going to talk about enhancing digital connectivity, keeping in mind inclusivity. Because what happens is we can talk about Viksit Bharat, but true Vikas requires inclusivity. We cannot leave the remote and the rural people out. And now in this panel, now we will try to figure out what are the challenges we face and what are the possibilities for overcoming them, what's the road forward. Because it's not just about the people who have the means who should be provided digital connectivity. It's everyone and each and every one of us who gets this capability. And the first question that I have is about where are we and how should we take it forward. This question will be for each one as an opener, and then we will slowly move on to understanding in a little more detail as to how this is going to pan out. So I'll start with in the order that they're sitting with Mr. Shiv. That what does he think the status of digital connectivity is in India and how can we take it forward?
So my thought process is a little bit out of the box. It's out of the box doesn't mean that this broadband connectivity is not being discussed. This has been discussed in the past, and it's just that it's not being discussed. So the first thought process is using the DISCOM, the electricity DISCOM poles to do aerial broadband. That is one. The second one is in congested areas like urban areas to use the water lines or the sewage lines to give broadband. The third thing I would like to bring about is that to me, other than one or two states, no state in India has taken interest on broadband. It is being considered as a problem of the central government because DOT belongs to the central government, and it's considered a problem of the 3 or 4 big operators to solve. Unless we get the states involved, I don't think this problem can be solved.
Thank you. So that's an interesting beginning. We start right in the beginning thinking out of the box, and that sometimes helps in something which is as complex as this, because it's not just about digital connectivity, it's also about inclusivity, and that has sort of been the Achilles heel. So I will now request Shri Dinesh Kumar to present the government's point of view. Where do they feel we are with digital connectivity, and what are the different schemes, and how does the government wish to take it forward?
Alright. Yeah, good evening everybody. So with the 4G saturation project and with the rollout of 4G and 5G by all the telecom operators, but that means in village 60% population will get covered. So definition of coverage is if a village is covered with the 60% of the population is covered, we call it as a covered. But that does not mean that every locality of the village is covered. So the next point will be to cover the remaining 40% of the villages, and in that we request all the TSPs also, because under USF they have come out with the 4G saturation project through DSNL. and that will also cover only 60% of the villages. So that phase will be the next phase of growth. But that does not mean that every locality of the village is covered. So the next point will be to cover the remaining 40% of the villages, and in that we request all the TSPs also, because under yourself they have come out with the 4G saturation project through BSNL, and that will also cover only 60% of the villages. So that phase will be the next phase of growth. Secondly, we have also to see that in terms of FTTH, where we are and what is the requirement. So, as you know that in the National Broadband Mission, we have taken a task to connect 90% of the institutions, for example, the Anganwadi, the Panchayats, the primary health centers with the fiber. So, still the connectivity is less than 30% in the country. So we need to connect before we go to individual with the fiber. We have to connect these institutions, because if the people will use the fiber, then they will go home, they will learn what are the advantages of the fiber, then they will demand at home also. So that is our target, and to provide fiber to home connectivity, I would request all the industry, because laying fiber and maintaining fiber is a costly affair. So like they have coordinated and cooperated in sharing of the telecom towers, they should be sharing the ducts and optical fiber cable also. And we should think long term in terms of Viksit Bharat, because in the short term we say that okay, we will lay the optical fiber cable over ground, maybe you are saving money in the short term, but long term you are inviting problem. So as you will hear from my colleague Mr. Khajuria that अभी कल परसों तेलंगाना में कितना फाइबर काटा गया है और बेंगलोर कर्नाटका में कितना फाइबर काटा गया है. So short term you have, but long term you have the pain. So I have been requesting all the industry, please ask the state government to provide me duct. If you are not able to provide me duct, then you allow me to lay overhead optical fiber cable. That should not be the first port of call. And we are working with all the stakeholders and trying to come, because we are not saying that it should be a common duct for all kind of utilities, but we are saying common shareable telecom duct, only shareable telecom. And we should work on that, and DOT has also come out with the framing of the rating of the building infrastructure, because what happens, maybe the main road is connected, but you have a fancy building or fancy apartment of 4, 5 crore, 3 crore, but you are not having connectivity. So what about telecom connectivity, mobile as well as fiber inside the building? So it should not happen that you have got a flat of 3 crore, 5 crore, again the wire is coming hanging through window by puncturing the window. So those are our focus areas.
That's very heartening to hear, and for the service providers must be quite excited to hear that, which of course brings me to Dharmender, because he looks at the right of way and certain other challenges that have sort of been slowing down the deployment. So what is your take? Where are we right now?
Yeah, thank you. So since we are discussing, and my apologies, I've got a bad throat, so bear with me. We are discussing feature of inclusive broadband. Okay, so before we delve into the topic, let me just quote certain figures for everybody to observe. 1.4 billion population, 1.2 billion connections already there. Okay, if you look at density, 131% in the urban area and around 59% in the rural area. So just look at this figure. That means urban we are more or less there, but in case of rural we are not. That means there is a huge chance how do we include the rural folks into the broadband. Now if you look at coverage perspective, 4G almost covered. Every nook and corner of the country is covered by all the districts. 5G, 99% of the districts are covered. So the balanced villages, whatever the villages have been left, say around 25,000 odd villages, which BSNL has taken that bonus onto that to connect those villages. That means more or less the country is connected, but still we are struggling. Now let's look at Bharti. I'm just picking up the point. 2.5 lakh, in phase 1 and phase 2, 2.5 lakh gram panchayats are connected. But I think the time has come to maybe change the matrices. Rather than looking at the kilometers of fiber, we need to look at connectivity. Rather than seeing how many primary health centers are connected, what are the kind of telemedicine consultation which has happened from there? How many CSCs are there in villages, and what is the kind of output which is coming from there? So, I'm taking it head on. Neeraj pointed out, and Dinesh also talked about that. How do we connect? He started discussing, how can we lay the fiber on the poles and all. And we are really, really thankful to the government of India, and especially to Neeraj driving this national broadband mission, and now the new version, which is NBM 2.0, where they have taken upon themselves along with us as the TSPs to ensure that the ROW rules, ROW portals, and all the state governments are aligned to these rules. Currently, what is happening, and this is my take, since I am working with all the state and most of the stakeholders, that while states are adopting the rules and they want to connect, but still they consider this to be a revenue making for the prosperity. Which in the long term, if you want India to be very digital, and we are going to realize the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister that we should be at the forefront, next 10 years or so, then it should not be treated as a revenue. This is what we are trying to make India. Even the states have to consider that easing out the ROW rules, are giving the permissions, are laying the ducks, like you said, laying the ducks for building the future. I think that is very, very, very important. Now, we have laid the fiber either as a TSP or through under the Broadband program. But how are we going to see that each household which is there is connected either through mobility or through fiber? And what is the kind of usage which is happening? I think that is more important. Then we can say that we have reached in the villages and all the people are included, and inclusive broadband has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dharmender. That's a very interesting point you raised. It's not just about reaching X number of villages. It's about how are the people actually using it. Does it translate into ease of living the life, for example? So before we get into some of the interesting points that have been raised by the panelists already, any opening remarks from your side, Akshat, and then we move on.
Thank you. I think you did it very well. I'll first say something else. One of the perils of being the last person to speak on the panel is that most of the points have already been mentioned. But I'm glad one point has not been mentioned by anyone here, which is about how do we leverage AI. And I think that's where the real differentiation can be. And when I say how do we leverage AI, leverage it to optimize the routes, leverage it to come up with metrics that can help shared infrastructure, create rules so that it becomes easier for operators to start looking at it from a different lens. But that's just one part. How about looking at a hybrid connectivity model where there is fiber, where there is wireless, there's also satellite? Because I'm very glad if you're doing fibers, which means I can look at potential business purely from my lens perspective. But if I look at it from a connectivity standpoint, I can help you build the highway. What about the tributaries that connect to the highway? So you need all categories of connectivity possibility so that you can make it inclusive. And on one last point, because I'm not going to talk much about this because everybody has spoken. Internet is a great leveler. If you go through the Maslow's hierarchy, I think it's now a foundational need. If I look at my own children, for them internet might come first, then probably water. So that's how essential internet has been. And when I say that with a sense of responsibility. The kind of content you and me sitting here in this room on Instagram and what we can consume, the same content can be consumed by somebody who's 3,000 kilometers away or probably in a rural area, all because of connectivity. So this democratization is also going to open up different opportunities, certainly going to help in ensuring that there's an enhancement in skill set as well. And that is exactly what inclusivity means. It does not mean, to use a line from the previous panel, that we're sitting in a 5-star hotel, this is elite level crowd that is here, but it is also to ensure that this connectivity reaches probably the last person within the country that we have. And on that note, probably, sir, we can move on to the next.
And to the next question is one thing that I want a little more clarity on before we move on, and this is about the hybrid deployment. So as we go ahead, probably fiber being made everywhere might be not the best way forward. So this I will ask Ms. Dharmender and then Shri Neeraj. So what do you think is the hybrid model, the path they should be struggle with getting fiber to a lot more places?
So I think when we are saying hybrid, then we should not be focusing only on fiber per se. Fiber is end state of broadband. I mean, the quality, the latency, everything, that is the end state. This is what I'm using the word end state. So if we don't have a fiber, maybe in a semi-urban area or even in urban area, say the likes of say Dharavi or Mumbai, okay, we are not able to get a regularized building per se to deploy a tower, probably FWA, which is the first a good 5G use case for us. That should come into play. So what we are saying, FWA first and fiber later. So I think when we are evaluating between FTTH and FWA, the only question comes is FWA, the cost for the CPE, that equipment, consumer, customer premises equipment, that will be borne by the consumer. Or even upfront the customer is not paying, that will be added to the bill for next 6 months or 1 year. In any case, he has to pay that cost. Versus the ROW charges or the laying of fiber or maintaining. Ultimately, if you see the fiber or FTTH as we call it, fiber to the home, suppose the density increases, the cost per home pass, we call it CPH, cost per home pass decreases. So it is definitely beneficial for us as a company if the density increases. But if density does not increase, then probably FWA will come into play. And of course, now coming back to your original question, which you said, hybrid model, FWA followed by FTTH. But if we are looking at, the broadband or the actual benefits of 5G or, next 5 years down the line 6G, then fiber has to happen. The densification of fiber in urban areas or in rural areas should happen and must happen if we really want India to be ready. And for that, again coming back to the rules, the acceptance by the municipalities, the local bodies, I think that every system, every nut and bolt should come into play to make India progress. That is very, very important. Unless and until all the stakeholders understand this concept, what we are trying to build in the country, it is not beneficial only for the company like us or any other DSP or ISP who is providing the broadband. We are building the future. Unless and until people, don't understand this, then it is going to be really, really difficult for companies like us or the NBM to easily find the right percent for fiberization of now. Currently operating at 30%. It has to go to 70-80% if we want to realize the benefit of 5G and 6G.
Thank you. Government's perspective, please.
So as you said that the one term is fiberization of BTS or fiberization of towers. So that is around, I think, 45%. 45. That means you are having 5G in your mobile. So it is showing 5G signal, but maybe you are connected through a satellite or you are connected through a microwave link. So on front end it is 5G, but speed may be slow. So it is like driving a BMW on a narrow road. So, right? So we need expressways, and expressways can be given only by the optical fiber cable. So, but here is a disconnect also, because connecting through fiber also costs money, right? But if you are saying to the customer 5G, then you have to give value to the money. You can't say that I will take on the microwave cable. So you have to be honest, the industry has to be honest, and the government has also to be honest to provide them the duct, because laying individual cables and again sharing will come into picture. Because what is happening so far, that a company or a telecom company which is has laid more fiber, they see it as a competitive advantage. Like in the earlier case, when the lot of property was there in BSNL, they used to see as a competitive advantage that okay, I have my tower. But later on, everybody has gone to sharing of towers. So similarly, this mentality of getting competitive advantage through extra fiber, we have to, I think, pass through that and share, because competitive advantage can be on many other things also. What do you have, what kind of services do you provide, what is your customer care and many other things. Because individual person having OFC and cutting other person's OFC is not going to work in the long run. So that is my view.
Thank you. So that's important. So the government is trying to make it happen in a manner that sort of hybrid, but eventually possibly sharing is also something that you might have to look at carefully. Now, like with every other thing, it's good to try and make something happen, but unless it makes commercial sense, so there are financial enablers, it is very, very hard for it to become a reality. So, a couple of words from Shiv about, do you think there is a mechanism to introduce financial enablers into the ecosystem to hasten the process?
I think so, but I think the problem with Dharmender was saying is that right now the way it's been positioned, states control a lot of things, right? It's like the operators or the broadband division is seeking, and they are the providers. I think it is also modeled in a way they're dictating you right away, do this. I don't see the dialogue between these operators, central government and states to loosen up and so that they facilitate. As I said, the discounts, electricity discounts are the easiest target, and they also subsidizing power in many states, losing the revenue. So for them, maybe leasing a dark fiber on a real pole, they cannot become service providers. They're not suitable to be service providers. But for them to show that this is a revenue option for you, and that in turn can be leased by the operators or by the government, other agencies, is a way to incentivize them to get on board with this.
Thank you. So I come to Neeraj's end, because at the end of the day, bulk of the financial enablers have to come from the government. So we move to Akshat first. What's your take on the financial enablers? What do you think should happen?
I think very rightly put by Dinesh. Also, I think in the opening remarks, Neeraj also shared this. We don't have a sense of collaboration, and I am of a strong proponent of the belief that every PSP, as well as state governments, central governments, there has to be one nodal agency which can essentially own it. Because the sense of ownership, and the sense of transparency, and the sense of passing the buck becomes a huge bottleneck when you're trying to implement a project at this scale. I also wanted to share and probably append to what Dharmender had mentioned earlier about probably not trying to reach all the gram panchayats. I think for a country like India, and for the kind of mission that we are on, it is extremely important to reach all gram panchayats. This country, Viksit Bharat vision, as we understand, has been in the making for a very long time, and we've seen some real speed the last few years. So there is no need for us to stop. It is for us to reach out to all the gram panchayats. But then probably add a caveat as well. Let us not focus on the number of connections, or in sense, number of gram panchayats. How many users are we looking at? Are we able to connect all the users of? And I think to achieve that goal, there has to be a seamless integration in terms of who owns what. Frankly speaking, for us, it could mean division of business possibility, but that's absolutely fine. We are in it for the long run. We are in it to build a digitally inclusive India, and I think that's a part all of us should be ready to take.
Thank you. So, something that I'm hearing everybody say is that there'll have to be a lot more sharing of resources and capabilities, and working together probably seems to be the way forward. So, before we come to Neeraj, is there a wish list that PSPs have, for example, for financial enablers, from the government or anything else?
Not really. In fact, Digital Bharti, US fund, which has been named now to DBN, that was earlier open for TSPs. Like we have been working in Northeast, and other communities are working in other areas. Now this has been given to BSNL right now. So that's okay. As long as we are serving the country, we are connecting the unconnected villages, we are okay with that. We are simply saying for connecting even in the urban or densification in the urban area, the local bodies should not be treating it as a revenue. That's the whole idea which I've been harping on. It should be seen as like we talked about, Neeraj talked about the common duct. Okay, if municipalities are not building that common duct, there are not many innovative ways. Where one of the TSPs, suppose one of the TSPs is picking up a road saying 10 kilometers. If I'm building that 10 kilometers, I'm ready to make 3 more ducts and leave it for the industry or for them to monetize. We are okay with that. So we are working with certain municipalities or certain local bodies who are progressive, who are thinking in a very different direction. You also talked about sharing of fiber. I'm just quoting certain figures. Okay. Now each discom across the country, both Transco as well as discom, they own a lot of fiber. Just to give you an example, I keep on quoting. Assam comes to my mind. Assam state has got 2,000 kilometers of fiber. Okay. But me, as a TSP, I picked up only 200. Just 10%. Where is the rest of the monetization? The reason the rates are kept so high, and this happens through tendering process. I really don't understand. If they have got, say, 48 core fiber, which is laid on the top of the transmission tower, if only 4 cores, or say 4 or 8 are being used, what are we doing? We are keeping the rate at such a high premium and not using it. Similarly, if you look at GAIL, 40,000 kilometer fiber, Airtel 70,000 kilometer fiber, IOCL 40,000 kilometer fiber, but where is the monetization? Who is looking at it? So somewhere, if we pull in the resources, like we are saying, can we declare fiber as a national asset? Probably the time has come where we need to work together. This is no more an advantage saying that I have made a fiber, now I will only work on this. So BSNL got, say, around 12 lakh, BSNL and put together 12 lakh kilometer of fiber, Jio has got around 8 lakh kilometer of fiber, I have got 5 lakh kilometer, put together around 40 lakh kilometer of fiber is there. If we put in the resources, we are there, we are almost there. And then on the top of it, how can we work, with the discounts, the transport, whosoever has laid the fiber, and then you see, from a finance perspective, you said. So we were discussing with, one of the gas operators, again, MGL, we were discussing in MGL in Mumbai. They have got their, what we call petrols. They have got the petrollers to see that the gas pipeline is working. I've got my petrollers who are working. Similarly, the competitors who have laid the fiber, whether it is ISP or TSP, they have got petrollers on the same route. It's a duplication of resources, man. This is no brainer. So all these innovative ROI solutions we need to think if we want to work together, and there is a lot of synergy which we can have and save money, and we can reinvest in building this country.
Thank you. Those are some very specific inputs. So they talk not just about financial enablement, they also talk to some degree about regulation, which was my next question. So as I go to Neeraj, I wanted to look at both of these aspects in your answer. Starting with the financial enablement the government is helping the TSPs and others with, and what are we doing by way of regulation so that things that people have talked about, sharing or monetization, is enabled?
So we have taken these inputs, and while framing the Telecom Act 2023 and Telecom Rules 2024, we have put specific clauses in the rules that any entity which is selling the optical fiber cable, they should look for the 25 years of return on investment. Right. Second thing is that the rate which they decide should not be very high from the market rate. So, but what happens in the government? So we are emphasizing these things which are already written to various agencies, including NHL. But what happens that in government, everybody shivers. How can I fix the rate? I should discover through tendering process. So we have given them a leverage. Okay, now it is written in the rules. You need not shiver about it. And I think in many agencies, including NMRC, Noida का जो Metro Rail Corporation है, कोई भी छोटी entity होता है, they try to go through the tendering process. But in tendering process also, what happens? Maybe Airtel is in dire need of optical fiber cable, so they will raise the rate there. Maybe and same rate they will offer to Jio or BSNL. Even though they were not in dire need, they wanted a normal rate. But they will say, okay, I have discovered this price from market and now everybody will have to pay this. So now the question is, are we collaborating in ourselves, the operators, the Airtel, the Jio and Vodafone? So similar thing has happened maybe if the Noida airport is coming and they will say, okay, I will ask 5 crore for the entry point. So somebody will jump onto it and say, okay, give me the whole business, I will pay you 5 crore. And then later on somebody complains that he is asking money. So I told them, don't give them the money, you ask money from them because you are taking the optical fiber cable there. So in you can say good habit or jumping on to getting the business, we try to basically distort the market ourselves. So first of all, though we are coordinating from the public entities, okay, you should not be charging more, but first thing begins at home, whether all the TSPs are coordinating among themselves or not. Because there is no question of tendering process there. So you can coordinate among themselves. So I think the charity should begin at home. And I can say that maybe discoms are having only poles, but through OPGW, we have basically tried and impressed upon the Ministry of Power. Earlier, the power grid which used to lay the optical fiber cables, they will charge for the bandwidth connectivity. And now they used to lay only 24 fiber optical fiber cables, then they will say, okay, fiber is not there, you buy bandwidth from me. And it was their business case. So after a lot of persuasion, now we have impressed upon them and they have come out with the guidelines that any OPGW which will be laid in the country will be 48 fiber minimum. And additional 24 fiber will be available for all the telecom industry. So that OPGW is required in far-flung areas in Himachal, Uttarakhand, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, because वहाँ पर क्या होता है normal, if you are using the OFC above the normal pole, तो वहाँ पे landslide हो जाता है, so the pole is not having much strength. But OPGW laid over the strong tower of the power, that is quite strong and reliable, and sustainability is also there. And in BharatNet project, through BSNL, the government is planning to lay 3.5 lakh root kilometer optical fiber cable. And that will also be available, and the SLAs will also be good. So that all will be available for all the DSPs to provide the fiberization to the telecom towers. And this time, this is not only laying of optical fiber to all the gram panchayats and on to all the villages on demand, but government has also come out with a business transformation unit in DOT. So what we are planning is, as soon as the fiber is there, we should be having a use case connectivity. Because if you say that you take fiber to home at 1,000 or 1,100 rupees per month, it is not going to work, because what he is going to do? So we have to have a PCO kind of model. So we have come out with a tender in the name of Digital Villages. So the vision here is, let us have a 500 or 1,000 square feet of space. It should have a common waiting room, it should have a common toilet, it should have a common camera, common the civilian infrastructure, common fiber connectivity, and it should be shared by education for school students, capacity building, skill development through using AR/VR. We should be having the health services, human health, animal health, and the plant health. So all this connectivity and all other services, if there is a health service, there can be insurance service, there can be a testing facility for lab kind of services, so that all this. So we are forcing a consolidation in the market. We are trying, okay, one person should run, and if the civil infrastructure is there, if the broadband infrastructure is there, many startups like Practo can come up, they can do the backward integration, that means they can bring the patient and the students, they can have the forward integration, they can have a tie-up with the hospitals and the teachers there in the cities, and this all can be connected, and any startup with a small budget, he can hire this facility for maybe 1 hour, just 1 hour. So he will not have to invest in capex. So such kind of centers we are thinking, and these centers, it is not that only government will provide. If you have the vision, the TSPs, they can also provide, because that will only sell your fiber. Otherwise, people are not going to take fiber asset. So it should have some utility to the end consumer.
Actually, running out of time. There are two questions that I'm going to ask. You can be either, or you can answer for both. So one of the issues is about the public-private partnership. Inclusivity in the form of the state government, the central government, local communities, all of them participating. And the second is what can we learn from some global best practices. So I'll start with Shiv. You can take either or both.
So I would like to talk about the fact that local districts, you mentioned about neither the big operators or BSNL can really do service. It's like a cable business. There are local people who know how to run it, how to manage it. That's why cable proliferated in these spaces. It was controlled by certain people. And those are the most appropriate people to take the broadband to houses. And what has happened today, what I want the people to check every day there are 2 to 3 category C licensees surrendering their licenses. Why? Because we are regulating them the same way we are regulating the big operators. And they get mails, you don't submit this, your bank guarantee will be in cash, you don't submit this report on this one. Actually, they are not doing anything. They are in the last mile. They have no control over the traffic. Most of the traffic they are taking it from the big operators. But they are so over-regulated that most of them are afraid and surrendering them. So I think these category C licenses who are dependent ultimately on the big operators to deliver the internet, all the controls will be on the big operator because if they have to block a website, if they are blocking on their Airtel or Jio blocks, it automatically gets blocked downstream. But I believe it is they have been so over-regulated, they are surrendering the licenses. We need them to educate them because they are the endpoints who can actually distribute broadband at the local level.
Thank you. So moving to Neeraj. So what is government thinking about as far as the private-public partnership and inclusivity in terms of the participants is concerned? Are you thinking about it and making policies, or you want it to be organically happen?
No, we have analyzed this point in detail and we are trying maybe the proposal in the making and maybe to give some concession to the small operators. But small operators are surrendering, but regulation may not be the reason. The reason is that the big operators see them as their competitor. They try to choke them, they give them the lease line at such a high price that he can't make business sense, including BSNL, because they say my rate is this and they have to connect to the expressway. So if his input is at high cost, how he will survive?
So there is a need to possibly make sure that these things do happen. So moving to
they have to be seen as a partner by the big telecom operator.
That's certainly a key takeaway. We talk about it towards the end. So Dharmender, what's your take here?
So I'd say, like you said, what are the best practices? There are a few which comes to my mind. If you look at Scandinavian countries, so what they are doing, all the municipalities, they take the onus on them to lay the fiber and connect down. I think that is one of its kind, and which is very amazing to see. So it is not they are not left to the TSPs to lay the ground. Now the TSPs can come, or ISP can come and they can offer the services. That's a neutral kind of a network which they have laid. This is one. If you look at the US, North Dakota, so the far-flung areas of US, or even say Korea. So what they are trying to do, they are creating some kind of cooperatives where the ownership of that network lies with them. So the maintenance of that network, the equipment which has been placed, so it's a typically PPP kind of what you are discussing. So because if the ownership of running the network are the use cases, because they have looked at the supply and the demand. Here what is happening, we are laying the fiber, we are reaching to a gram panchayat without realizing the use case. What is the use case? And probably one of the big use case while I was really looking at what are the best use cases which can pick up from somebody. So e-Sanjeevani, I don't know how many of you have used because the medical services are available to all of us here sitting in Delhi NCR. But e-Sanjeevani, millions of customers have consulted doctor, and this is the initiative of Government of India. Amazing. I mean, this is a telemedicine and thousands of doctors have registered on this. Similarly, Diksha, there is another program where the teachers are being trained and the students are doing their vocational courses. If you look at PMG Diksha, another one which is again say some of the cases which I said earlier also, Mumbai IIT. So Maharashtra, I don't know, maybe on the side chat we were discussing. What they have done, they are using the TV white spaces, the spectrum 8.5 gigahertz, and then they are using that spectrum to connect the villages. Created some kind of a wireless network. Earlier there were 7 villages, now it has moved to 20 odd villages. How can we scale this up to connect the unconnected? But again, ownership is with them at a local level, and that is the best part, and that is how these kind of networks are thriving. I think we definitely require triple B kind of a solution to connect the unconnected and generate employment at a local.
Thank you, Akshat.
I think very well articulated, all of them. I'm just going to talk about 3 specific global best practices that we've come across. There's a US model, there's a European model, and then there is I would say, Australian model. And all 3 of them, we need a combination of that. The US model, there will be a central funding, combination of private players plus local governments. They work together to work on connectivity. The European model is exactly what Sir previously mentioned as well. When the municipality ownership comes into play, they help in digging, they help in laying cables, etc. at the ground level. And then of course the coverage first model, which is exactly what's happening in Australia. Because all these 3 regions have different challenges. Australia, vast areas which are absolutely unconnected, probably 10 or 15% of the population only in those areas, in just about 80% of the land mass. So these challenges are something that we can learn from. But what we also need to know is, can we leverage AI, can we leverage software, can we leverage automation to run analytics on this? Because all of this, unless it is measured, unless there is an outcome-based activity, outcome-based ranking, none of these models will eventually work. So yes to working together, yes towards a public-private partnership, yes towards helping them achieve that goal, but also genuinely seeking support. There has to be proper tracking, because unless this does not get tracked, it will not happen. And I am a strong proponent of believer that what does not get measured does not happen. So you need to measure it to ensure that it happens.
Thank you. So those are interesting points. Before two things that seem to stand out. One is, of course, everybody will have to work together. I mean, we really cannot work in isolation and hope that this dream will be realized. The other thing is that some of the best practices we talk about might make sense for countries with high per capita incomes. In India, we probably can replicate them, but the way we do it might have to be a little different. I mean, what I'm hearing is that the central government and the state government have to come together first, and the state government has to come together with the local communities and possibly then educate the larger number of people in villages, right? And maybe that's when they realize that this is going to become something that they will find hard to live without. So it is very much a requirement for most users. I get a sense that they think it's magic and someday they will be connected. They really are not participating in the whole story of the digital connectivity to digitizing or providing broadband connectivity to everyone. And what is your closing remarks? So I'll start with you, Akshat, and move towards this.
And we should move towards ensuring that all connectivity is focused on ensuring that probably we are opening up a talent pool which is yet not unearthed. We should look at it.
It will be slightly repetition, but I'll say for inclusive broadband connectivity, 2-3 matrices, which we can see, from connected gram panchayats to connected villages to connected households. Towers from 40 or 45% or to say 80%, maybe 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. That is the fiberization which should happen. And how much of fiber we have been able to utilize amongst ourselves. That can be another parameter. And of course, there can be other matrices, as I said. If we are working in the CSCs, or we have created some kind of hub, which is talked about. So, what is the kind of use which is happening there? So, rather than measuring it in kilometers of fiber, if these are the matrices we see, then probably we can say that we have reached. Thank you.
So maybe I will say that when the light was invented, nobody thought that you will use the light in this manner. And a company will employ many people to generate such kind of lighting system. So similarly, we say that okay, we can give fiber to home, but what a person can do with fiber to home, we are not telling that. So we have to say that these kind of use cases can be there. So what he can do for education? Can we use AR, VR for educating him, skilling him? What we can support him in telemedicine? Whether he can get some medicine or some consultancy sitting at home? What kind of e-government services he can be given at home? So we have to go beyond the mentality of providing broadband. We have to say what services can he take from the broadband. Then on, he will only demand the broadband, and everybody will then push to provide the service. That's all.
So, sir, this is for, because you are from IIT, this is something for you to take back. There was a lot of buzz in between about broadband on off. And I'm sure there are technical challenges, that's why it's not taken off. But I think that's a subject which I feel you, the other IIT institutions should really explore. Because just imagine if we just plug in to the power socket and we get the product. But I think it's a technological challenge. Probably IIT can explore and see if it can be solved.
Yeah, so that's a useful input. There is some work and we probably discuss that offline. So, but now we've really run out of time, and thank you very much. We had that people will have to work together. And the other thing is that the people who eventually stand to benefit have now started, they have to become part of the ecosystem. They have to put some skin in the game. They can't keep on waiting for something to happen for them. They have to start participating. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience.
Thank you.